Okay, we'll go over a couple things on the vacuum secondary and how it operates. It's going to be hard for you guys to see, but down in here, you'll follow it down. There's a port here, and there's a port right over here, about the same location. And what those ports do is when those throttle blades, this primary throttle blade opens up, air rushes past there, and it's going to create a vacuum, which transforms over to this port here, which corresponds to the port here where I've got the little cork gasket. I glued it in. That makes your seal on your vacuum pod. Then it's what it's going to do. The vacuum's going to pull the pod and then turn down here. Only when the throttle's open, it's going to pull up on the secondary shaft, opening those butterflies. Now what the second port does, because it's tied together, is it's an assist for the first one. As these throttle blades open up, air is going to rush by that other port, and then it's going to assist in bringing that thing to wide open throttle. They use both systems in order to be able to get that secondary to wide open throttle. If there's enough air passing through there, that's why they're self-regulating. Is if you can only pull so much air according with the spring tension, those secondaries are only going to open up on what the engine's demand is as far as airflow. And that's why I'm saying that's why that linkage has to close these. When these things are open like this, if it didn't close those secondaries, because that air rushing past this port here, these things would stay wide open. You know, even if you closed the front one, if you didn't have that link arm connected. So that link arm is going to force these things closed, and you've cut the vacuum off, and they'll stay closed. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to install this, and I've already put the nozzle and the squirter in. You know, there's a pintle that drops in, and gasket on the top and the bottom, and it screws into your nozzles, and that's, you know, pretty A&P stuff. But I'll go ahead and install the vacuum secondary pod, and I've already tested this. I pulled vacuum on here to make sure that this pulls closed. You can even test them like that and hold your finger and make sure they stay closed. Let it go. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to test the vacuum port. Like we're going to shoot compressed air down here past the port, like the air was rushing through the carburetor, and you're going to watch the vacuum pod open up these secondaries. I had to wire. You have to wire the primaries open, otherwise they'll keep them closed. So you just wire something back to test them. And you know, the air nozzle I use like a standard one with the little rubber tip. And what I'm doing, you guys can watch this, is I'm getting right over that port, and I'm going to rush the air by it. I'm not quite on it. See how it pulled it up? So now you know your primary circuit's good. We're going to check the secondary circuit the same way. You got to be right over that tip and rushing that air across to make them operate. So now we know both circuits are working. And we shouldn't have any problems, you know, when this thing kicks in, opening up that secondary. This is all stuff you want to check on the bench, you know, before you go out in the car, go out on the road. There's a little C-clip that retains this. I'll put that C-clip on, and we'll go on to installing the choke, kind of give you a clue on how the choke system works, and we'll continue on with that. Okay, we're going to get the choke set up. You guys have ever seen these little plastic pieces that like takes up the slop, and the choke here allows it the rod to move around? Well, the only thing you got to remember is this little notch goes towards the body of the carb, and this radius part goes down, because you're going to want to be, you got to go in here and just hook through and drop that rod in, and it slides into a little holder like right here, and then you just take your rod, and because it's got that beveled part, it'll allow it to slide in. And you need to put this in before you put your choke shaft in, because that locks it in. So the choke shaft slides through. That. Your blade drops in. It's got some really small screws. I will Loctite those so they don't work out, but we're just going to put them in just in case I have to remove that rod to bend it to adjust this choke. So I just put one in right now, that'll hold it. So that gets the the choke operating. It'll index. This is your choke housing. And the choke housing is going to fit on here like this, and that rod's going to hook into this back part here. And the rod's actually long enough, it catches this fast idle cam, the cam here with the steps. It's going to correspond to this, so when it's activated, it's going to open the throttle for a fast idle. There's a vacuum port here, and you got to use a little cork gasket that comes with it, because you're pulling a vacuum through this housing, and it's restricted because this tube here has a connection with a tube that goes to your exhaust manifold. So what it does is the vacuum from the engine is pulling hot air from the tube that's connected to the exhaust manifold, pulls that hot air in, heats your coil up, and lets it open up. If you don't have this connected up, you're not going to get any hot air up here, and this choke, I guess it eventually just radiant heat will heat that, but it would take a lot to make that open. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and mount this up, and then we're going to check our choke function. Okay, I have the choke housing mounted, and as I was telling you, it's pulling vacuum. It actually pulls it out of the center here, and a passage goes up that goes into this chamber. Now this vacuum does two things. It's going to pull hot air because the passage is connected here. It pulls hot air from the exhaust manifold, and it's also applying vacuum to this piston that rides in here. This is your choke pull off, because after the engine starts, that choke has to crack open in order for it still to get some air, and it's still making a rich condition for it to still run. This is fighting against the spring that's in here. So when you're adjusting your choke, especially for the pull off, you'll start the engine. It's got little notches here, rich and lean, and by putting more, when you put that on, there's a little hole there, you put it in that stud, and you crank it up, and when you start the engine, that piston will pull against that spring, and you might need to lean it out a little, to get it, every car, every application is different, or you might need to, richen it up, so, it should crack about 1/4 of an inch space here, is usually about right, but you'll tell when you run it if you either got to put more tension on the spring or you got to put less. I usually set them just like a notch higher. When I ship them to guys, it seems like it's pretty close. That rod that goes down there, there is a clip down here that retains it. you know, when you dismantle it, you'll see that, take a lot of pictures of all this stuff. The fast idle setting is, this lever here is your fast idle cam. When you bring the throttle back and this closes, it picks this cam up, which has got a bunch of little serrations at the bottom, and it corresponds on this screw right here. And usually the way I set them is I open the throttle so I'm on the highest spot on that cam, and I back it off to where my throttle is seated against its stop, but this is not contacting the cam. I got my throttle blades are closed right now. Closed on its stop. And what I'll do is I'll take this till I just touch the cam, and I put one full turn on it. Feels like a little difficult to get in there. I got one full turn against that cam. Now it's open to throttle that much. That's a good starting point. When you start your engine, goes to the fast idle, it'll pull it off that high step one notch, and you got to see if that's good. You know, the fast idle's good, it's working right. That's an adjustment you make after you install the carburetor. I'll go ahead. This gasket goes in place here, and then your choke coil goes on, and we'll adjust that, and there's a ring that goes on here that locks it in place. If you got to adjust it, you just loosen these 3 screws, and then you can turn this whole device. I'll go ahead and button up the choke, and we'll continue on. Okay, I just wanted to go over this choke system one more time. I was looking at my edit on it, and I might have missed a few things. As I showed you, when this housing was off, there's a vacuum port back here that comes into this channel, which provides vacuum down here to this piston in here. That's your choke pull-off. It also is got a small port that is pulling vacuum. It's pulling your exhaust, your hot exhaust from your exhaust manifold, which is the tube that connects it here, and it comes back in here, and there's a port right here, and this gasket fits on like that, and it's sealing the coil area right here for this exhaust gas to vent into here to heat this coil. I hope that explains it. If not, you know, you guys can leave me some messages. Okay, we're gonna finish up the video. Where we left off last is I put the spring assembly in for the accelerator pump, and the way I adjust them is I tighten the spring up until the little arm down here is loose, and then I'll relieve the pressure until I take up the slop and the linkage. So when you just slightly move the accelerator throttle arm, it engages the pump. This is the high-tech fuel pressure tester I use. It's a marine fuel pump bulb, 3/8 fuel line, and I've teed in a low pressure fuel gauge. What we'll do is we'll pump fuel up into the bowls, and we'll set the float level. And this is the correct way to set the float level. People tell you on there, and you read that if you have it on an engine running and you're trying to set this float level, well, the engine's vibrating and your fuel's going to start, you know, flopping out the hole. You don't really know where your fuel level exactly is. You know, the carburetor should be level. You fill it up, and you don't let the fuel dribble out of the hole. You want the fuel right at the bottom of the thread. You don't want the fuel coming out. If you've got fuel dribbling out of here and you plug it up, you don't know where that fuel level is going to wind up being. you know, it could come up higher, too high of a fuel level. So all we do is start squeezing the bulb. It'll start fueling the bowls. We'll see if we got any leaks or anything. Look it on this hole and kind of see where the fuel level is right now. You can see the floats coming up. Well, the front one's a little low. And the back one is also a little low. And see, I can hold fuel pressure with the bulb. It won't hold it on its own because it's got a check valve once it bleed off, but I hold, you know, 6-7 pounds on there. See if the needle and seats will take the pressure. So what we'll do is we'll increase that float level a little. And like I tell you, when you've got these gaskets lubed up, you know, I've just barely got this snug. There's no leaks coming out of this. So to raise the fuel level, we want to turn the assembly out, bring it up. So we'll go like about a half a turn. Snug this down. That's all the pressure I got on there, and they're not leaking. And we'll pump up some more fuel. Okay, it can come up a little bit more. It's going to be hard for you guys to see, and I just have to take my word for it. I'm right at the bottom of that thread on the back. Now the rear one needs to come up a little too. We'll do the same thing. We'll loosen the screw. Just back the nut out. We'll start with like about a half a turn. Lock it down. Back one can come up just a hair. Starting to dribble out, so I'm going to back it down a little. After you adjust these, if you're too high, you can just rock some fuel out, put a couple rags on to absorb the fuel. You can lower that fuel float level and then fill them back up, get where you need to be. That's real good. And the front one's holding. I think the front one I'm going to push down just a touch. Rock some fuel out. both right at the bottom of the thread, just where we want it. All we can do is put our plugs in. I like to just rock it around, fuel sloshing to make sure my plugs aren't leaking. And then I go around, I want to first, we want to check our accelerator pump system. Have to work the throttle a few times to get some fuel up to the head. Now there it is, it's kicking already. Hardly touching the throttle, I'm getting response out of it. Full throttle, nice shot. Accelerator pump system's working fine. All we'll do is we'll go around and check, see if there's any leaks, transfer tube, any leaks on the gaskets, around the accelerator. Okay, what we'll do, my camera cuts off. I'm going to timer and figure out how to fix that. I just go along and I check for any leaks. You know, I've got fuel pressure, pressurize the bulbs. I want to make sure there's nothing leaking, the screws, you got to check everything. And what I usually do on these, I leave them sit overnight. I'll put a piece of newspaper under them, and you can see if there's any type of fuel leaks, that newspaper will leave marks under from the fuel. Everything seems to be tight. Like I say, tomorrow I'll go over, I'll re-snug up the bowl screws, see if the gasket's compressed any at all. And that's really about it on this this rebuild. Like I say, I do this service for people. There's, you know, I got rebuilders I work for. They just send me their parts, and I service them, straighten out the metering blocks, plate them, chromate the bodies, send them all parts back. I also do the complete rebuild. I work out of my garage, so I think my prices are really reasonable for the service I provide. This carburetor is for a customer. It will be going on eBay for sale, so if anybody's interested, this is a 2818 with a date code of 434. It's a 64 Holley carburetor. I forget exactly what the application was on it, but they're kind of rare carburetors, Corvettes I think. They fit on maybe 327s. But if you guys got any questions, you got any comments, anything to add, feel free. That's why I put the videos out there. I like to see people do this stuff themselves at home. Any help, services I can provide you, I'm glad to answer any questions. And thanks for watching.